Hi there, welcome everyone. Welcome back. I'm just going to take a deep breath here while we all gather. Maybe you'd like to join me in a little centering and grounding breath. The most important thing is to remember to make your out breath longer than your in breath. So I like to breathe in for 4 seconds and I like to breathe out for 6. So why don't we just take a couple of calming breaths here together? Perfect. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And I'm so glad to be sharing these tea garden chats with you. So, this is our first in a new series, and I'm really delighted to just gather our community together again, to build each other up, to share information, to share inspiration. And really, our focus with all of these talks is going to be around organic gardening and kitchen garden herbalism. And I thought today, for our very first one, we would cover the 3 permaculture ethics. And that is so important because these permaculture ethics are not, a set standard you have to follow to get this kind of garden or that kind of garden. Um, they're really something that has developed from our culture, right? And so, we might need to just take a step back and even take a think about what ethics really are. And so I want to present to you the 3 permaculture ethics, a little explanation of each one, as well as kind of a broad definition of, what ethics are and how they can be guiding for our garden design. And then I do want to just kind of come back to the garden perspective and why these ethics are important when we're creating, designing, growing our gardens, right? And how these ethics actually impact not only our gardens, but our lives and in turn our families and our communities, right? So let's dive into that. Basically, when we're talking about ethics, it can really be misconstrued that ethics are kind of a moral code, a right and wrong. And that's actually a better definition for morals, right? Or what we know, in our hearts and souls to be, good or bad, or, good or evil. These are things that are our morals, right? And ethics actually develop in community, right? They are kind of a system that develops through our culture as it evolves, right? They give us an understanding of when I have a positive outcome and when I have a negative outcome, and how the way that I've acted, the way that I have behaved, maybe influences that, right? And so ethics are really there to kind of keep us, on the rails, and to give us some guidance about how we feel internally as people. What do we feel good about and what do we not feel good about? And we can use these ethics that have actually, they don't belong to permaculture. I always want to make it clear that, permaculture is actually an ever evolving, dynamic system and way of thinking and way of designing and way of living. It is not just a set gardening system. You don't have a permaculture garden or not, right? Permaculture actually now stands for the mix of these 2 words, permanent culture, right? And so we really can think of this as a kind of way of thinking and a movement that we can get behind. So let's take a look at those 3, right? And they're very simple. There's only 3 of them. And the first one I want to start with is earth care, or care of the earth. You'll see it written a couple of different ways. But that is, the kind of number 1 permaculture ethic, because permaculture started from studying, many worldviews and many populations of people, and how they had been living in balance and in a harmonized ecosystem, right? And what we notice about nature is, nature is self-affirming, it's self-contained, right? It's self-responsible, self-sustaining. And so the idea with this ethic of earth care is that we want it to, with the way that we're acting, mimic nature, right? We want to be self-sustaining, we want to be self-affirming. So this really comes down to, how can we care for the earth, or how can we care for the planet in the actions we're taking, right? And one of the most important things I think we can really lean into with this first ethic is actually the living soil, right? Seeing our soil as an incredible resource. And this ethic of earth care means that we are gardening and living in a way that is rebuilding this kind of natural capital that we have in the soil, this resource that is our birthright as humans on this planet. But how can we preserve that, care for that, protect that, rebuild, regenerate, right? And I'm always cautious to, mention this. We do want to remember that in the current situations that we're in, what the situation we're in right now is not sustainable. If things keep going the way they are, we're actually going downhill, right? Our soils are being depleted, things are degrading in quality. The nutrition values in our food is nothing like what it was a generation ago, right? And that is largely because our soils have degraded and depleted. So the ethic of earth care is really focused on the living soil, the soil health, and also, the care of the planet, and the understanding that we need to respect these living life forms in the soil, in the earth, whether we understand their function in the ecosystem or not, right? I'm always in these organic gardening groups, and people want to kill the pill bugs, and they want to get rid of the grubs, and they hate the slugs, and that's all well and good. But just because we don't appreciate that, we need to understand that those creatures are actually still an important part of the system. And when we act with this ethic of earth care, we are trying to increase the beneficial soil life, the soil health, right? And create more environment, more healthy soil for our food to be grown in, for other wildlife to be living off of. So that's a little bit about the earth care part. So the second part, which I think is also really key to this kind of intrinsic value that we have as creatures, right? The second part is people care, okay, or care of people. So this means that we cannot create garden systems that are totally going to kill us and make us drop dead from stress or hard labor or whatever, right? We need to be thinking about looking after ourselves, and also our kin, our families, right, and our communities. And so that is all people care, right? It's not just one person, but it's understanding that we are interconnected, and that we have a personal responsibility to care for ourselves and those around us, right? And when we live in relationship with others, when we collaborate our efforts and work together, we actually affect much more change for the good than if we were working independently, right? So it's understanding that we need to care for people, we need to provide resources, we need to support businesses that we believe in their values, right? Like, because we're supporting the people behind those businesses, right? So people care is really about focusing on the opportunities where you can give and receive, and how you can look after yourself, take responsibility for your own needs, and also share out into the community. which leads me to my third ethic, which is fair share, or sometimes this is also known as future care. So we had earth care, people care, and then fair share or future care, right? And this really is about setting limits and redistributing the surplus. So I think one of the funnest ways to think about this is in terms of, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So when I'm going to the store and I'm wanting to not use plastic weed barrier, not use landscape fabric, and I'm going to get plain brown cardboard, someone else is trying to throw this away. This is a waste product from somebody else. But for me, it's actually a huge resource because I can use that to build plastic-free garden beds, right? And healthy soil and feed worms and take care of myself because of the mental health benefits of actually going out and gardening, right? So you see how these ethics begin to exponentially kind of grow, and they're all interconnected with each other. But we want to think, with another example with the fair share, is the idea that, if we plant one apple tree, right, we're going to get way more apples than one person can eat. And so how can we redistribute that surplus? How can we take a fair share? It's not that we need to cut ourselves short. We absolutely want to resource ourselves, right? But we want to make sure that we're also redistributing to others so that we have that regeneration, that future care, that means more people are resourced, more people are able to give when they've been able to receive, right? And so we have to set limits for ourselves and acknowledge things like, I might be able to grow 50 pounds of tomatoes, but am I going to have the time to harvest them, to process them, to preserve them? If I'm not, I would do much better to actually share that surplus and offer my friends or community to come and pick some tomatoes from my garden, right? So that's a little bit about the ethic of fair share or future care. But really we want to think about leading by example. And so I think, right, our gardens are one of the ways that we can really show these permaculture ethics in action, right? And the way we do that, in the way we create resilient gardens and abundant gardens, is by using these ethics to guide us in our garden growing journey, let's say. So I want to come at this from two perspectives, right? One, we are using these ethics as our decision-making process, right? Or as a decision-making tool. So when I'm making decisions about how I'm going to garden, what I'm going to grow, what I will do with things, right? I'm making those decisions, checking them against these ethics. Does that align with caring for the earth? Does that align with caring for people? Does that decision align with the future care and making sure that there's enough and that I can pay it forward, right? And if those decisions don't align with those ethics, then it's a pretty good idea to find another solution, right? And as we said, permaculture in general is a way of thinking and a way of design that you can then make different choices by choosing to see opportunities rather than challenges, right? And, we have a saying, it's one of the principles that, the problem is the solution in permaculture, right? And so we'll get into that when we talk more about permaculture principles in the upcoming season. I'm going to be back live weekly doing these chats with you, so we'll have plenty of time to dive into that. But we just want to know that we can come back to these ethics whenever we're having to make decisions about our garden, and we can check them with the ethics first to know that we're growing something resilient, right? Because when it cares for the earth and when it cares for people and when it cares for the future, that's a resilient garden, right? That's a garden that is not just sustaining, it's regenerating, it's creating a better future season after season, right? And the second point with this that I want to bring back to the garden design is in our design, right? So when we're actually designing our gardens, when we're designing the physical spaces, or where we're going to show up in an allotment or something like that, we can use these ethics to inform our design choices as well, right? So we can design with water preservation in mind. We can design with, fire protection in mind, right? We can design with drought accommodations and plants that can handle drought, right? Depending on what we're experiencing in our climates, right? And when we use these ethics in design, when we make sure that our gardens are healthy, right? The soil is starting out in such a good, dynamic, healthy state, right? Then we know that our garden is going to be more abundant because there's already more life, more nutrition in that soil. And so it means that the garden can produce more, right? And then for us, we can care for ourselves in the design, right? In doing things that work for us. Do not put your garden all the way on the other side of the house or the property or somewhere where you're never going to see it and it's going to get neglected and forgotten about, right? A people care thing is to make your garden really accessible. And my favorite example of this is one of Bill Mollison's. He was one of the founders of permaculture, and one of his tests for your garden design is whether your garden passes the wet slipper test, right? And I've tested this out in my own garden every time I've established a new garden. And what this means is, if it was raining and you were just gonna slip into your slippers and scamper out between the raindrops, could you still get to your garden? Could you still harvest something, right? So that's a people care thing to make the garden easy and accessible for you, right? And it also means that you're going to have more abundance because the more you're in your garden, the more harvests you get, right? Whether that's actually herbs or whether you're getting peace of mind or beautiful wildlife that lifts you up and brings you joy, right? These are the design choices that we want to make with these ethics in mind so that we are designing for both resilience and abundance. So I want to cut us off here for today so that I don't overwhelm you, but just take those 3 ethics with you and see in your current garden how you feel. Do you feel like the earth is being cared for? Do you feel cared for? Do you feel like you can care for your community? Do you feel like you can receive from your garden and also give back and contribute to distributing that surplus or committing things for the future care. I'd love to hear what you're experiencing of these ethics in your garden already. And also, I have been feeling really called in light of all the circumstances going on in the world lately to just be here and be present as a community, to share in this. I feel like this is one of the ways that I can activate people and contribute to the common good. And so along with this first permaculture ethic of the living soil and earth care, I'm going to be doing a free community learning session this Friday, November 15th. So I'm going to start doing these community sessions again monthly, and I haven't announced it yet. I'll make sure I put an announcement up in the group, but this Friday is going to be soil health, and our December class is going to be around garden design and planning. So I would love to see you here for those community learning sessions. I would love to see you back here for our weekly tea garden chats. I didn't pour my cup of tea. Okay. I needed something really nutritive today, so I chose nettles because that is a wonderful tonic for the body and an incredibly nutritive herb. And then I also added bee balm, which is really calming and has a wonderful scent and a wonderful smell. So I'm going to have a sip of tea here to close us out. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for caring about these permaculture ethics. I wish you a wonderful week. I will see you here on Friday for our community learning session on soil health. And otherwise, I will see you in the group next week for another tea garden chat. Have a great day, everybody.